On the first day of the American Revolution, April the 19th of 75, Jabez Wyman and Jason Winship were at Cooper's Tavern, where the Starbucks is today, and they were enjoying a couple of colonial-era cocktails. And while they were at the bar, the British were retreating, and the British came in and murdered them on the spot. They were two civilians lifting a glass. That would perhaps be our most famous pre-19th century example and evidence of the consumption of alcoholic beverages in public houses in Arlington.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Rachel Zenberry. I am the chair of the board. Could I please ask the other members of the board to introduce themselves?
Shana Corman Houston.
Thank you for having us. Our mission at Arlington Brewing Company is to spread joy. And we do that through incredible craft beer and human connections. And it's really nice to see everybody here. We've been looking for a space here in town for 4 years. And we're really excited to be in front of the board tonight.
I appreciate the enthusiasm from many folks that we've received letters from and the outreach that you've done to the community as well. I have questions, as I assume that many of my colleagues do as well. So let's go ahead and start with Steve. I have questions, as I assume that many of my colleagues do as well. So let's go ahead and start with Steve.
The materials mentioned use of water recirculation and water capture. I assume this also will include chilling wort.
Yes, that's correct. So part of the brewing process is cooling down hot wort, and typically groundwater is used for that, and all that water is recaptured, and then it's reused for either cleaning or for the next batch of beer.
Is there a way that you can schedule the pickups and deliveries so that there's no truck traffic when the children are going to school in the morning and coming home from school in the afternoon?
I think we can make every reasonable effort to request that deliveries happen within specific hours, and my experience is that our current suppliers, which will continue to be our suppliers, are amenable to that.
What's the total customer capacity of just the interior of the building?
Do you have plans to screen any rooftop equipment?
How often do you plan pickups, and where will waste be stored as it's awaiting pickup?
And how will you control the volume level?
Is it one EV charging station or two?
I'm also be asking for a light survey.
And how many people do the brewing process?
Where do you expect the rideshare drop-off area to be?
The history of alcoholic beverages in Arlington goes back to the earliest days of English settlement of Arlington, then known as monatomy. The primary alcoholic beverage would be fermented apple or pear cider. One of the reasons for drinking fermented beverages is that water supplies were either not reliable or, more to the point, they might not be safe. There was never a concept of, shall we say, recreational drinking. In fact, kind of recreation was frowned upon in the Puritan era. It was simply a product of food and drink that was consumed here in colonial times. In later times, as the area developed, Massachusetts Avenue was a virtual, what we would call a highway today, and was called a highway then, even though it was an unpaved road leading between Cambridge and Concord. And that led to the establishment of taverns and hotels. Once taverns came to town, you had traditional barroom setups where alcoholic beverages would be consumed as a place to go and to do that. Over time, what people would see as the Puritan discipline went away. People would see more kind of random drunkenness, or they would see problems of addiction and having a negative impact on home life. And that in turn drove the conclusion that really no alcohol would be the way to go. The temperance movement in Arlington, I think, really gained steam with the development in the 1880s of the Reynolds Red Ribbon Club, a temperance organization very heavily promoted by the editor of the Arlington Advocate newspaper. Arlington was always very, shall we say, anti-saloon, so much so that when there was a proposed trolley car line that was going to come into Arlington down Lowell Street, through Lexington, but it was going to begin in Woburn, that the editor of the Advocate said, well, one of the reasons we should oppose this trolley car is that it will bring Woburn people to our town, and Woburn has a terrible saloon habit. There were different referendum votes in the 1880s, and the town kept flipping back and forth. And one year they would vote dry, and the next year they would vote wet, and it was always close. But eventually the town moved firmly into the dry column. You would hear about situations such as over in East Arlington, especially in the section of town that was then known as Goat Acre, or the Acre, which would be south of Broadway. You would hear about kitchen bar rooms, or the distilling of whiskey, or the selling of whiskey, basically, almost like a speakeasy type of dynamic. And the police would be called in, and there would be a raid and destruction of the alcohol and such. And that was, of course, very scandalous and frowned upon. I would liken it to prior to the legalization of cannabis. People would have a friend or know somebody or someone who grew it or got it.
The number of folks who are here to speak this evening. By 8:40, we will close public comment. The board will discuss any additional comments, or whether or not we'll be able to move to a vote this evening, or whether we'll need to continue the hearing.
Nowhere in the letters of support or the application itself was there acknowledgement of the burdens that this could create. What is being proposed goes way beyond a brewery. The reality of dropping a taproom and restaurant directly into the middle of a residential neighborhood should give everyone pause. My wife and I have PTSD watching so many near misses, including our 3-year-old goddaughter almost get hit by a distracted driver. Our neighborhood lacks the basic infrastructure: sidewalks, traffic lanes, stop signs. It's really, really hard to be a driver on our street.
I'm here in my capacity as a member of the Arlington Library Foundation, and I just wanted to reiterate the organization's ability to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk through their Foxy Librarian Year and their engagement with multiple fundraisers around the town. They've proven to be authentic, engaged members.
This middle school corridor is really important for us as a community to put as a priority. My kid almost got hit by a truck on this road as well. So if we can put the kids in this neighborhood first and have this be a very visible walkway for the middle schoolers, that would be wonderful. And then if you can move your entrance to one of the sides, so it's not right in front of our houses, seeing people come and go.
People walking by, even they start laughing loudly or talking loudly, I hear it directly in my bed. And now this is going to be proposed to occur 6 days a week, it's going to change the fabric of the neighborhood.
I think many people in this side of, in the Heights area will be able to walk to the Arlington Brewing Company. It's a fantastic product. I think it's a great location and help to revitalize the area.
The easiest way to put this is it's basically a square peg in a round hole. While we're in favor of local businesses to strive in Arlington, the location is just not the best fit for that neighborhood.
I think putting all the pressure on this one project to fix a neighborhood issue is hard. I think they can do a partial way of trying to solve that, but they can't solve the problem that's inherent of that neighborhood. I don't agree that we should put all the burden on this one project here to do that. You can't fix all the problems.
Why don't I run through the list that I have now in terms of the things that
People would say, oh, I would eat at Jimmy's much more often if I could have a beer or wine or a martini when I ordered my steak.